Hey guys, Jay here. So today we're going to be looking at a full-on walkthrough or full-on tutorial of the Eversolo Play unit here. But if you have the Eversolo DMP A6 or the A8 or even the A10, the menu system is going to be very similar between all of those units. So I highly recommend you watch this tutorial walkthrough of all the settings, all the menus on this unit so that we get the full experience, the best settings, the best practices using the Eversolo Play and understanding what each setting does. So if you like this video and if you like, me explaining all the walkthroughs, which takes a lot of time, you appreciate the effort, then please click that like button and subscribe. And I also made a full-on review of this unit, so check that video out in the description if you're wondering how it compares to the other DMP units of the past. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. First thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to be actually using the phone mirroring app, which I'll tell you how to do later in the part of the video. But for now, we are going to use this so that I can navigate easier. So the first thing that we're going to do is go into Settings tab, scroll all the way down, and then do Factory Reset on the other settings. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to start from fresh so that we all start on the same basis here. So we're going to take a little moment for it to reset. And also while we're waiting, if we find anything that's specific you want, you can use the timestamps in the description so that you can pass through all the parts that you don't want to watch. But I recommend watching the entire thing, as we're going to go through all the settings, and there are a lot of settings on this unit. So, very cool animation right there when you do the factory reset. And when you get your unit, this is how it would come. So this is, from the very start, so that there's no confusion, with people that got their used unit or whatever. I recommend factory resetting anyways. Okay, the unit has been factory reset, and the first thing you're going to see is the language. So choose your language. You're going to choose English, and then you can choose the time zone here. I am not in LA, but we'll choose LA for now. And then I'm going to choose my internet, so punch in your internet code. So once you're connected to your Wi-Fi, you are going to press next here. But if you're choosing Ethernet, which is the hard wire on the back, you can use the Ethernet port to connect it that way if you don't want to punch in the Wi-Fi code. So once you're connected, choose next. And then you're going to be brought to this page to download the app. I highly recommend that you do download the app, as you can do very cool things. So you're ready to use, and you click start to use, and you are on the main page where we first started the video. So you may be also greeted with an update as soon as you restart your unit. And that is very beneficial. Eversolo has a lot of updates very frequently, and I recommend doing them as soon as they're out, as it fixes a lot of problems, bugs, and makes the unit overall way more functional. So always a pleasure. So hopefully this update that we're doing right now over Wi-Fi isn't going to mess up with my tutorial because it may change a few things here. But nevertheless, it's all easy to understand, so we're going to do the update. So as you can see, fairly quick. Okay, so we actually had two big updates, so hopefully that doesn't mess with the tutorial today. So we have the music service tab here, and as you can see, there are a few different tabs that you can go back and forth from. But we're going to start from the very left, music services. So this is where you would choose the music service that you have already. It may be Apple Music, it may be Tidal. I personally use Tidal or Qobuz, but you can click on it, and as you can see here, I'm already logged in, but you can also you will be most likely greeted with a login page depending on the app, and you can log in. And the great thing is that now you have multiple tabs that is similar to what your app would provide. So you have the playlist and all that kind of stuff. Wonderful. So we're gonna go back by pressing the home button here. And then we're going to go to apps. So we're going to jump over the functions for now. And as you can see, you can actually download more stuff. We have Amazon Music, Qobuz, Napster, Deezer, and they're adding more and more each update. So you can download it and it will appear here on the music services. So you have a lot of different choices here, and you can go to even Radio Paradise, internet radio, podcast, virtually anything. And then so we're gonna go over functions. And here you have the internal capability of the Eversolo Play here. You have the ability to use it as a CD player. And as you can see, I already have a CD installed, but you can actually open the CD drawer from the side. You just press a little button, it comes out, and then you load your CD and you put it back in. Pretty self-explanatory. And you can play the CDs directly off from the CD player and use it that way. Or you can use CD Ripper and rip your CDs to the internal drive of the Eversolo Play so that without the CD later on, when you're offline or whatever, you can play back the files. So that's super useful. And then you have files, which self-explanatory, and then you can connect the separate storages to the back on the USB 3.0 to access this, and then your stored files of the CD Ripper will also be here. So that's that. And then you have the EQ functionality, which I'm particularly interested about. And when you first click on it, you'll be greeted with this message basically saying, hey, use it at your own risk. And that is a warning warranted because you can damage your speakers if you do not follow the instructions correctly. So you would use the paramedic EQ. I don't recommend the graphic EQ. The paramedic EQ is better. So you'll click on that. And then you'll be greeted with this page, and it will give you the bandwidth from 20 hertz on the very left here all the way up to 20 kilohertz. And then you can adjust any of the frequencies here, as you can see. And then you can toggle between each of the frequency that you set to make those fine adjustments. So let's say I want to bring down 250 hertz because the bass is a bit boomy in my room. Let's say, well, we can adjust the gain to 2 dB, 3 dB. Okay, so let's stay at 3 dB, right? Well, we want to decrease it, so let's decrease it actually. So let's go all the way down to, and you can actually punch in the numbers, but I'm using one hand here because I'm holding a microphone. So bear with me. So -3 dB. And then you can actually change the Q value, which you can make it more shallow or more of a wide band correction. So you can decrease the Q or you can increase the Q. So see what happens here when I increase the Q. So I'm increasing the Q, and as you can see, the correction is becoming more and more sharp and narrow. And so higher the Q, the more narrow that kind of correction band is. And you can do this for, again, all these different frequencies here. You can change the frequencies and so on. So you have the frequency, the gain, and the Q to mess around with for your paramedic EQ. And then on the top here, you have select genre. And you have flat, pop, dance, blues, classical, jazz, slow song, electronic music, rock, country, vocals, acoustic, deep, game, hip hop, Latin, loudness, lounge, piano, bass booster. You get the point, there's a lot. And so you have a lot of options there if you want to mess around with that instead of adjusting on your own if this is your first time messing with PEQ. Okay, and then you can just simply press the reset button if you want to reset all the damage that you've done. So that's pretty much it for that. And then you can also toggle this on so that you have it on or you can have it off. So very quick to go back and forth. And I recommend that you keep the EQ gain to -5 dB or lower because you want to make sure that it doesn't damage your speakers. And so that's the function you get here, which is super useful because this is done on the digital domain. It is even better. And you can, on the configuration output EQ here, you can make sure that it is going to be effective on your USB DAC section or your coax section or speaker section. So you're gonna make sure that it's gonna be applied to, which part of the chain inside the Eversolo Play. Do you want it on the speaker output? Do you want it on the coax output? Do you want it on the USB DAC output and so on? So that even if you're using a separate DAC or whatever, you still can have the EQs applied going through it because it's done on the digital domain once again. Very high tech for a unit like this. And then you have the room correction. And this one is going to be harder because, as you can see, no microphone found. So what I'm going to do here is quickly grab the calibrated microphone I have and then connect it to it and show you how it's done. So this is the back side of the Eversolo Play, and this will be the same for the DMP A6, A8, and the A10 as well. But you want to have a calibrated microphone like the U1 Mic Mini that I'm using, or you want to use the Eversolo's own microphone. So you want to use a calibrated microphone with a calibration file, and you will get the calibration file from the manufacturer of the microphone. So you're going to connect the USB cable from the microphone to the top USB port here. And then you're going to get a thumb drive and put the calibration file in it. And then you're going to connect it to the bottom USB port on the back here. And that's it. You're ready to rock on once you turn the unit on. So after connecting the microphone, if you go into the room correction software, you'll see your mic selected. And we're going to choose the correction file in a minute here. But before we do anything here, we're going to go back. We're going to go into EQ. And then we're going to click on that plus sign to create more configurations. So first configuration, we're going to name low frequency, or you can name it however you want, but I'm going to name it low frequency. Okay, and then the second configuration, we're going to name it full range. Full range. And then we're going to just simply go back to the room correction. And then we're going to choose the microphone calibration file. Choose file. File location will be your external drive. So this one right here, the little USB icon. And then you're going to get the calibration file. Now the calibration file, you should be getting it from your microphone manufacturer or the company that you're buying it from. So ask them. And then we're going to go next step. And then here you want to keep the volume -60 to -20 dB is the recommendation. But my recommendation is to keep it around -50, -40. That is plenty loud, and I found that works the best. So here we're gonna test the sound out. So that's pretty much where we want to be. So we're gonna click next step. And then here, I like to click on this little icon here and toggle on for the combined measurement for the left and right channel, because if you don't toggle this on, then it's going to do a sweep for your left and right channel separately, and that's not really realistic, because when we listen to music, we don't listen to the left channel and then the right channel separately. We listen to them at the same time. So it's better to have it on, because this will allow for a more realistic correction. Okay, so start measuring. Okay, so we now have the measurement curve. So we're going to start design. And by default, as you can see, it has created a filter design that is going to be flat. And if you click on that little icon in the top right corner, you're going to see that it's targeting for a flat frequency response. You can also change this to BK, but I would recommend sticking with flat. And then we have the overall smoothness, which will turn it off. Smoothness, we'll set it up to the lowest. But we don't care because it's off already. And then the rest is going to be pretty much default, except we're going to mess around with the frequency response in just a minute. But first, we're going to confirm all the settings are good. And then we're going to apply to configuration to the full range right here. Okay, so once you have done that, you can also choose to save this. So you can export to the chosen path. And then OK, just for good measure. And then we're going to go to that icon again, and we're going to go to the frequency range, and we're going to change this range from 20 kilohertz to 300. And once we confirm, we're going to see that it's going to basically not correct for the mid-range and high frequency and correct for anything under 300 hertz. So this is good for bass management. So we're going to apply to configuration, and we're going to click on low frequency, and we're going to have that set there. So the reason we do this is because sometimes the full frequency response correction works very well, But most of the time, I find that the bass correction is all I need, and I like to keep the character of my speakers, or sometimes I just feel like, it's not doing a good job, in terms of correcting the mid-range and high frequency, which is a common theme with room correction software. So anyways, we're gonna go back now, and we're gonna go back to the EQ setting, and we're gonna click on the low frequency. And as you can see here on the very right, you see that our filter has been imported. So it has been configured to this preset. So we're good here, but well, for the low frequency, as you can see, it is correcting for the low frequency peaks and dips here a little bit, but it's gonna go for the linear response. So we can also turn on the parametric EQ here and do more adjustments. So maybe I want to, I don't know, increase the frequency here a little bit and get a little bit more bass going, right? So I can increase it a little bit. Be mindful of how much you're increasing it. You don't want to go over that red line. So I'm gonna keep it a little bit safe. Maybe decrease the Q a little bit so that it's more easy transition, right? Stuff like that. If you find vocal sibilance, then we can reduce the 8,000 hertz area a little bit. So we can adjust the Q here, make it sharper. So we can do all sorts of stuff to find, adjust what you want from the filter and the overall preference there. So you can add parametric EQ on top of the filters. Same thing for the full range. You see that the full response has been corrected here, but you can also go back to the parametric EQ setting, turn it on, and adjust each frequency the similar way. So that's how I would do it. And now you go back. And then another thing here is that you can see the configure output EQ. So you can turn this on and then actually click on it to choose which one you want. And you can do this on the fly, so it's very, very easy. So if you were to play out of the amplifier inside the Eversolo Play, then you can do the full range, or you can choose to target just the low frequency. It makes life so much easier. Same thing for coax. You can turn this all on or all off, and you can just choose the different configuration you want for that output. So this makes it super easy, and remember, these are just two settings, but you can control just the mid-range if you wanted to. I don't know why you would want to do that, but let's say you want to just do the mid. You can by going back to the room correction software and adjusting just the frequency in the range that you want to correct, and do all sorts of stuff like that. You can have configurations for each album if you wanted to. The possibilities are really endless as you play around with it. So that's how I would do it, and it makes life so much easier. And once you do it, you just have these configurations already here, so you can turn it on, adjust it whenever, wherever you want for any of these output choices. So that's pretty much it for the tutorial on the room correction and how to use it. Okay, next we have the multi-room functionality. And so you can have more than one of these play units to, have it zoned so that you can have it play in your kitchen, your living room, your other room, your bedroom, what have you. I only have one unit here, but if I had more units, it will show up here and it will be zoned. So you can decrease the volume, as you can see, depending on the units, turn the unit off, rename the units to, I don't know, kitchen or something like that. I'm not gonna do that here, but you get the point. This is much like Sonos or other multi-room kind of units. And the great thing is, like I said in my review, the Wi-Fi capability is spectacular on this unit. So you're not gonna experience dropouts and stuff like that, even without the hardwired Ethernet, because this is a multi-room device. Okay, then you have transfer songs. So as you can see here, you can directly transfer the media file from your PC to your Play without having it directly connected to each other, just through Wi-Fi if you have it on the same network. And as you can see, all the IP address is labeled here for you to check out. Okay. So the next thing is apps. And of course, we already mentioned this is where you can download all the different apps here. Connect. And then here you have all the easy connect capabilities like Rune Ready, Tidal Connect, Spotify Connect, AirPlay. So technically, you don't have to use this app if you don't want to. Eversolo does give you the freedom to go directly into your Tidal app and use AirPlay, for example, or Tidal Connect, Spotify Connect if you're using Spotify, to play music directly without having to access the app. Okay, next we're gonna go to Cloud. And as you can see, this can be used UPnP, WebDAV, Dropbox, EMBI, I don't even know any of these, Jellyfin, Plex, and so on. So it also supports cloud devices if you want to transfer your files through cloud. So you have multiple options over Wi-Fi, cloud services, and whatnot. If you're not on the same network, there's multiple ways to get your music onto the Play. Okay, settings. So this is where it's going to be the most intensive. We have the source. So we click on the source. The internal player is going to be the most people's use case scenario. This is if you're using this as an all-in-one unit without connecting anything else, just this unit and a pair of speakers is all you need. And that's what you would be using. And then you can see you can choose your output port to have it as speakers. And then if you want to use the internal player, the streamer, as just a streamer, then you have the option of using the coax output or the USB output. And you can see that there's outputs in the back there for the coax and USB. And you can connect this to your external DAC if you have a high-end system and you want to use your own DAC and so on and use this unit just as a streamer. Then these are the two outputs, digital outputs that you have options for, is coax and USB DAC. You can see that the USB DAC is grayed out right now because if I click on it, there is no USB audio device connected. So if you don't have a USB device connected, a separate DAC connected to this unit, then you will not be able to click on that to choose the USB DAC output. On the coax, you'll see a little bit of a setting button right there on the side. And so if you click on that, you'll see the max sampling rate as well as the format of that unit. Click on the settings and you can see you can change the max sampling rate from 192 kilohertz to 96 kilohertz. I recommend keeping it at 192. You can do DSD audio, so you can choose to transfer DSD or convert DSD to PCM or DSD over PCM. I recommend DSD over PCM if you're a fan of playing DSD files. And then you have the sample rate latency. So you can click on the sampling rate latency here. I recommend clicking or sticking to 0 latency. So that is the options you have for that. And then if you click on speakers, so this is if you're using as a internal unit, all-in-one unit, you can do the same thing here. And as you can see, you can change the volume step. So this is how much you will be increasing the volume each time you press it. And I recommend 0.5 dB because that gives you the most fine adjustment in volume. So that's what I would set it to. And you can see the startup volume. You can change the startup volume. I highly recommend that you keep the startup volume at default. So remember your last volume. And then if you click on speakers, so notice how if I click on coax, the subwoofer option on the right goes away. If you click on speakers, you can click on that subwoofer now, and then you're invited to this menu for the subwoofer. So you can click on this on button so that you can turn on your subs if you have a subwoofer connected to this unit on the sub output on the back of this unit. And then you can change, all the different settings here. So we'll go through each one. So we have the main port output bypass. I don't necessarily recommend you turn this on. This is if you don't want to high pass. So I recommend keeping that off unless you want both your fronts and subs to play the full signal. Subwoofer port output bypass. Again, I will turn this off as this is for specific scenarios because this disables low pass filters as well. So the top one disables high pass, lower one disables low pass. And then you have level. So you can adjust the level of your subwoofer. So if you want to, there's an easy way to adjust how much bass you want in your system. You can just, dial it in perfectly, right? By 0.5 dB. And then you can go down to the cutoff point. So this will be the crossover point from your subs to your speakers. So most speakers will be like 60 hertz or 80 hertz. Will be depending on your speakers and how low your speakers can go, but you can play around with the cutoff frequency here very easily. And then you have the subwoofer delay. So what this menu does is you measure the distance between your main speakers, your subwoofers to your listening spot, punch in the numbers, and you're gonna be able to, for example, I don't know, 28 centimeters, that's very, very close, but let's just say, and then it's gonna be able to process that and add a delay to your subwoofers to match the main speakers you have going on. You can even change the unit to inches, centimeters, and then you have phase. So phase is going to be only 2 options here. Sometimes you get 3 on different units, but on this unit you get 2 options, 0 degree and 180. 0 degree is if your subwoofers are in front of the listening position, so same position as your speakers, and 180 would be if your subwoofers are behind you, if you place your subwoofers behind. And sometimes in movie theaters or home theaters, I should say, people do this, so that will be for that. So most people will stick with the 0 degree phase. So that is the options and customization you get with the subwoofer, which is pretty extensive. I don't have a subwoofer connected right now, so I'm gonna turn this off, and then we're gonna go back to the settings, and we're gonna now have Bluetooth in. And as you can see, it's going to be the almost exact same thing, except you're no longer using Wi-Fi, you are going to be using Bluetooth, which is Bluetooth like 5.2 or something like that, pretty high-end Bluetooth. But I recommend sticking to the internal player and using Wi-Fi, as that will give you the best quality. And then you have the optical input. And so if you're using a TV and you want to connect it via optical, this will be mostly for like older TVs that doesn't have HDMI eARC, which we'll talk about in a minute here. But again, optical input, you're gonna have exactly the same kind of adjustment as Bluetooth in and the internal player. And of course, this optical input will correspond with the digital inputs, the optical inputs on the back of this unit that you see here. And then you're gonna also have coax input, which is going to be the exact same thing as the optical input, just a different type of digital input. So maybe you'll use this unit for, let's say, a CD transport that has a coax output, and then you will put it into the coax input of this unit. But again, this unit also has a CD player built in, so I don't see a reason to do that unless you really like your CD transport and it plays like DSD or whatever, and you want to, use the coax in for that. But again, that is the option for the coax input. Now, HDMI eARC is going to be the most interesting one, because this one is going to be the one that most people are going to be using with their TV. So as you can see here, it says ARC in, but if you click on the little, I'm gonna go back here to show you. You see that little settings button there? Yep, if you press on that, you get greeted with this page, and it is backward compatible with ARC in case your TV is not compatible with eARC because it's a last generation TV or something like that. But most people will have eARC. So you wanna choose eARC, and there you go. You have eARC via HDMI on the back to your TV's HDMI eARC, and it will have all the sound from your TV as you play movies or watch something from YouTube, Netflix, and what have you. And you're gonna be able to hear all the sounds coming through the play to your speakers. So again, if you go back to the coax in, by the way, you don't see those or optical in, you don't see that little settings option there. So when you see it, if you press on it, you're gonna get an extra option. As we can see with the HDMI eARC, that was the option for that. But if you look in the bottom here, you can also see that you still get the subwoofer menu and all that kind of stuff, exactly the same. And then you have the line input. Now the line input is going to be if you want to use an external kind of digital to analog converter or another source, and you have already done the digital to analog conversion. Remember, this is an analog line input. So the conversion from digital ones and zeros to the waveform of analog has already been achieved. So you don't want to be doing that again inside the play. Well, not that you can. So when you use the line input, you're using the play as just a preamplifier and the amplifier. So the streamer capability and the digital capability goes away. So this will be useful if you have, let's say, a more higher end streamer and DAC, but it is limited because it only has RCA inputs as a line in and only one set of RCA inputs. So not my favorite connection here. And then you have the phono input, which is very interesting. And as you can see, this one also has a setting button on the right corner here. And so we're gonna press on that. And as you can see, this unit supports both moving magnet and moving coil cartridges, which is absolutely insane. Most integrated units do not support moving coil cartridges. Those are usually more higher end cartridges. But if you have, let's say, a budget Denon cartridge, legendary, right? Then you can use the moving coil phono here as well if you wanted to do that. You're gonna select whichever source you're gonna use, and then you're gonna go back to the home page. And as you can see, we're gonna have other settings here as well. So we're gonna have the audio settings. And here you can choose the speaker output. Let's see what we get here. Again, you get the startup volume and the volume step to adjustment. We already did that, so we're good. Next, we have the subwoofer. Again, the same menu that we just saw. So as you can see, you can change it on the audio settings, but you can also use the shortcuts on the source menu to do the exact same thing. So that's what's gonna be all this, because as you can see, USB DAC output, you have all these kind of adjustments that we just saw on the shortcut. And then if you go all the way down, you have the maximum volume limit. So you can set a volume limit. I recommend just keeping it at basically 100, which is 0 dB, but you can set the analog or digital max volume limit. Okay, so when you're back on the main menu, you have the playback settings. The first thing they're gonna see is the replay gain source mode. And if you click on this, you have two options, track and album. And what this is basically, you know how those tracks that, one of them is very loud and one of them is very quiet, so you have to adjust the volume between them? Well, this normalizes the volume between each track so you don't have a jump scare or anything like that. I personally like to leave this off because I don't like normalizing volume. I feel like that compresses, and I've heard from studio master engineers that it's not a good thing to do. But anyhow, you can do it so that it targets each individual track to normalize the volume, or the entire album that you're playing. So it will normalize, based on the volume of the album as a whole. I tend to leave this off, and that would be my recommendation, but that will be up to you. And then we have the CD auto play. So when you insert the CD, it will automatically start playing, which is great. I leave this on, but you can also turn it off and choose to, play it when you click play instead of it playing automatically. I'm gonna leave it on. And then you can also enable gapless playback, which awesome. I leave that on. That means that there's gonna be no gap between the transition of each track, and it's gonna be smooth and continuous music instead of this weird gap between each track. I leave that on. I love that feature. And then we have the previous button reset playback here, which is pretty self-explanatory. After the current track plays for 5 seconds, click the previous play button to reset the current track. I leave that off, but that'll be up to you. This is highly based on your preference. Skip to next device playlist. Enable this option to automatically play the next device playlist after finishing the last song in the current playlist. When in sequential play mode, I turn this on because I want the music to keep going through my playlist. But that's gonna be up to you and how you configure your playlist. Jump to the playback screen when starting. When playing from the track list, jump to the playback screen. So and then I enable that because when I click on a track, it'll come back to the playing screen rather than just staying on the playlist, and that's not a good look on the screen. So if you care about the view meters and stuff like that, then I will turn this on. Autoplay queue on startup. So again, you can have it start up and play as soon as the unit is turned on. So I'll keep that off because I want to be able to adjust that. Automatically open the playback screen on startup. Again, only effective when using the built-in player, and there are tracks in the playback queue. So this is only if you add to the playback queue. So I'll keep that on. Multi-room audio quality. So this is when you're using it as a multi-room device, and this is going to be a pro tip here. It is by default set to the lower resolution of 48 kilohertz. I recommend the original sampling rate to be enabled. This way you're gonna get the highest fidelity possible even in the multi-room audio quality setup. So perfect for that. Eversolo original sampling rate audio engine, I highly recommend that you keep this on. Basically, this is going to make sure that you have the highest sampling rate possible from the playlist or the track that you're playing. And I felt that it worked very well. So we're gonna keep that on. So back to the main settings, and then we're gonna have display settings. So on the display settings, you're gonna have plethora of options to go through to customize this unit and how it looks and stuff like that. You have the knob setting, so you can change the color of the knob. As you can see here on the right, the change of the color is quite nice. Oh, this one's quite nice. So you can have gold, red, midnight green, lavender. I mean, the options are really, the sky's the limit. It's a lot of options. But we're gonna leave it at brilliant gold. I like that one. So we'll leave it at that one. Go back, and then we're gonna have the knob brightness settings. So as you can see here, I'm at 47%. We can increase this all the way to 100%, make it look really bright and nice. Or if you don't want to, you can just completely turn it off. And as you can see, you can actually turn on or off, completely extinguish when shutting down. So you can turn this off, and then it will not completely turn off when you turn the unit down. If you turn this on, it will completely turn off the knobs when the unit is turned off as well. So we're gonna leave that at 48%, whatever, 48%. I'm gonna go back here, and we're gonna have the screen brightness setting. So again, you can change the screen as bright as you want or as dark as you want, entirely up to you. So all customizable. We'll leave it at 58% for now. And then we're gonna have the theme. So right now we have only two options. Again, with more firmware updates, there'll be more. We have the simple, and you can click on that little, you can see that little icon there. And then you can change to the different background settings as you like. And you can see that a little notice comes up that this will be in effect when you go back to the main interface screen. So we're gonna keep it at black because I like the black look, but you can change to literally any color you want here and adjust the color of the screen. But you have the simple, and then you have the classic, which gives you a little bit of a bar on the bottom for your quick menus, which is also great if you want to do that. But I just clicked the simple. I like the simple look. Okay, and then you have the screensaver. And so if you play for long periods of time like I do, then I have this at 2 hours. But basically you can have it just turned off right away, or on standby for 2 hours before turning it off. That's entirely up to you. So you can have it to close the screen or display like time on here. As you can see, you can change to different kind of screensaver mode, much like a desktop. And you can even preview it to see what will be there when the device is turned off. See, there's a countdown, which is kind of weird, but anyways, so you can choose that as you wish. So screensaver tips: turn on this switch and there will be a 10-second countdown reminder. So basically what you just saw there, it will start counting down before it goes to screensaver mode. And then you have the screensaver album details. And then, you turn this on, and basically you will enter the album detail interface if you want to display your album while it's on screensaver. And I want to keep this one on. The screen turns on when adjusting volume, just because when I start adjusting volume, I need to be able to see what I'm adjusting. And also, that's when I want the screen to turn on, so that, that if I'm adjusting the volume more or less, I'm more likely to be playing the unit if I'm adjusting the volume. So it makes sense to turn that on for myself. So that's gonna be the screensaver settings. And then we're gonna have the view meter. And you're gonna see a plethora of different view meters here to choose from. My favorite one so far has been this one, but I can see a lot of people liking the blue one as well. That one is quite nice as well, but you can choose whichever VU meter you want. Or you can choose the spectrum, and you can change the different kind of dancing spectrum meters for your visual pleasure. And so you can turn that on as well if you want to. So entirely up to you if you like VU meters or spectrum. And then play details, and then you can change the theme of how you want the configuration of the playing theme to be. So you can have the artwork on the left here, or just the titles. Entirely up to you, but I recommend you play around with it. I have it set to theme 3, I believe, from my previous experimentation, but that's going to be entirely up to you. So another thing that I like is this one. This is something that I asked Eversolo to do long time ago, and they have implemented it through firmware updates. So I believe the DMP A6 now has this option as well. I recommend you turn this on because it's really cool. You can slide it over, as you can see in the animation, and then it will show you the navigation bar, and then it can go away once you start playing. So this will allow you to have a more of a screen real estate to showcase your artwork on your albums and tracks and so on. So I like to keep that on. Okay, so that's gonna be it for the display settings. We're gonna go back to the home screen, and we're gonna have the network settings. And as you can see here, this is gonna be where you're gonna be, wiring or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. So that's gonna be the settings for that. And then we're gonna have phone control. So if you click on phone control, you can see that you get this kind of QR code that you can scan to download the app, or you can just go to the App Store and type in Eversolo to download the app. And then you have update. So we just did the update, but as you can see, you can change, not change, but you can do a USB update and connect it. But I don't see the reason to do that because you have an online update. So you can just click on that and it will show you, checking for the latest software, and then you can confirm that it's the latest software here. So the version that we are on is the 1.4.76. So that's going to be the one that we are on, but it should be pretty similar as time goes by as well, maybe a few adjustments. And then back to the main page, we have the setup wizard. And as you can see, we can change it without having to factory reset if you decide that you are now suddenly a Spanish speaking person or otherwise or whatever. If you change owners, you can do that right here. And then you have the other settings. And then this is again where you can change all the different things: external storage device, PC file transfer. You can change all the settings here. Power off menus on standby, power off menu. You can change all that kind of stuff here. And you can also clear the launcher data if you do find that your device is becoming a little bit slow, which again shouldn't be a problem, but that is an option. And as you can see, there's a factory reset button right below it as well. So the last setting here is about, and this will display all the information about your unit. As you can see, it's displaying my IP that I'm hiding away. You have that RAM, 4 gigabytes. Amplifier is the Pair Path Ultra HD, which is basically a Class D amplifier. You have all the information here displayed for you, including the DAC and so on. So you can check that out as well. You can also click on that little arrow icon beside the version to go straight to the update page. And then on the very right corner here, you see that little music icon. If you click on that, you're taken to this page right here where you can change the playback to VU meter, right? And then you can just swipe to change the VU meter. So you get a lot of different options on how you can change things on this unit, which is great. And they're all like self-explanatory. Just click away and find out basically. But very easy and intuitive to use. You can do the drop-down menu, and then you can have the EQ on, right? Or off right away. So very quick stuff that you can do. You can turn on the sub here, on or off. So this is the quick menu settings here. And for the most part, most people are gonna just use this. So this is the spectrum meter So you can make it colorful or just, plain, whatever, that's up to you. And then here, I'm gonna actually play something here so that you can see what it looks like on the screen when the music is actually playing. So I'm gonna go to music services and go to title. And let's go and my playlist. And it doesn't matter what we play here. So I don't know any of these tracks. So let's do some view all, title masters, whatever, and play all caps. There you go. So we're playing all caps. And then as you can see, you can have this nice display with the artwork. So if I'm actually going to play here, I'm gonna have to decrease the volume, and you can do that just straight on your phone as well. But you also have this volume knob on the right on the phone that you can use to adjust the volume. And so it's gonna be all the way down. So if I'm playing, you can see that behind the artwork, there's a spectrum playing, and you can change that to whatever kind of color you want. And as you can see, it is dancing very nicely, showcasing the frequencies that is playing. Very, very cool. Awesome stuff. Or you can have the VU meter, right? So you can choose depending on the mode you have. So you can just change between the different VU meters here very easily. Yeah, so very intuitive, very easy to use device. I'm using one hand, so it's a bit hard to swipe here, but here you go. There it is. There's all the VU meters. And then if you are, let's say, playing all caps and you're like, oh, you know what? I like this track. I want to add it to my playlist. You can click on that 3 dot on the right there, and then you can add to device playlist, favorite to title, add to title playlist, view artist, view album. You can do all that sort of stuff that you do normally on your title app right here on the device itself. And for the artwork, if you want to change how the artwork looks on the screen, or the configuration of the screen, I should say, then you can just swipe between different kind of configurations here, as you can see, to showcase it in a different way. I personally like the artwork on full screen here, so that's what I do, but you can change it to the 3 different kind of display settings. You also have this little speaker, amplifier icon here that you can click on the very right bottom, and it will take you straight to the source menu. So if you're, having multiple devices connected to this, like turntables, internal, whatever, then I can just quickly choose phono and then play my turntable. Let's say I'm streaming, I'm going back to the streaming. I can go back to internal player really, really easily through that little icon right there. So again, very easy to kind of navigate and find out everything that you need on this device. And lastly, I will show you the most useful feature on this unit, which is the ability to cast all the menus and what's shown on the screen on the Eversolo units onto your phone. So you can do exactly what I did here and not touch the screen and get it dirty, but do it just right on your phone. So as you can see, I have the Eversolo app opened here, and all you have to do to mirror the screen onto your phone is to click on the screen button right there. So you click on that screen button, and it's going to mirror everything that is going to be on the Eversolo screen. So for example, if I were to, let's say, go back to the menu, then you can see it is going to do exactly what I do on the phone on the screen as well. So very, very cool, very, very useful. So that's gonna be it for this video. If you have any questions or if I missed anything, leave it in the comment section below and I'll answer to the best of my capabilities. And I'll see you guys on my next video. Until next time.